Welcome to another tutorial at Roaring Records. Okay, today's tutorial is a little more advanced, and this is what I use with my intermediate level students here at my school. But we're going to talk about reverb and bussing and why it's important to know about bussing. So, reverb is not echo. Echo holds a very specific place in the world of audio engineering, and reverb and echo are not the same thing. So that's important that kids understand. Echo is like an exact replication of that sound at a later time, whereas reverb is recreating room resonance or the vibe of the room that you would be in at any given time. And kids need to know that. Anyone doing this needs to understand the difference in those two things. You can create an echoey effect if you do reverb to the extreme, but it's not really what you're shooting for necessarily when you use reverb. But let's go through a few things. First of all, here is my retro synth sound. This is the sound I'm going to use today. It's just straight up out of Logic's retro synth bank, so it just sounds like a basic gravelly synthesizer. Very dry, very bland per se, and we want to make it a little more interesting. So right here is my track inspector. That's where I can see exactly what is happening on my track. If you have stuff covered up here, you can shrink it using these little arrows so that you can see everything that's available in your track inspector. Depending on what track you're using and your place today, maybe there are tons of things listed here, and maybe yours is just as basic as mine. Nonetheless, each one of these things matters that's in the track inspector, and I want to help you understand it a little bit today. If you don't see it in the track inspector, then you can see it in the project mixer. And what the mixer is just a sum of all the different track inspectors laid out side by side. So I'm actually going to use my mixer to help explain everything that's happening right now. So in the MIDI effects category, if you add any of these different processes, then it's going to transform the notes you play on the piano keyboard over here into certain different things. This is not a tutorial about those, so I'm going to skip what they are. Just know they have to come first before the things on the input line. And when you get to the input line, this is where your sound is actually going to start to begin. And I'm just going to draw some right here. So my sound begins right here in this line, and it travels down as I go. And when it gets to this line, this is where any audio effects are processing are starting to happen. So that could be a place that we could put an effects plug-in, like say reverb or compression or EQ or any number of things like that. Then we're going to keep traveling down. This is where we can tell it to send information to different places. And since there's nothing there right now, we're going to go down to our stereo output. That tells us where our final signal is going to go. Well, it says stereo output. So here's my stereo output track. It comes from right here, loops back up to here, and now the signal can be reprocessed again with any audio effects before now going straight to my headphones. Yay, headphones. So that is how that process is currently working. So let's test out what it would be like to add some audio effects right here. Well, since we're talking about reverb today, let's add a reverb. And I just really like Space Designer in Logic because I think there are so many different things. If you're using an older version of Logic, yours won't look exactly like this, but if you're using the most updated version of Logic, this is what it looks like. if you click up here on user defaults, there are tons of presets, and I tell my students to start here with these presets all the time. So let's say we want a small space. We're going to go in a hall that is very diffuse. Notice it says there's 1.3 seconds of reverb in this diffuse hall. Well, all these settings are what it takes to make a diffuse hall. You can definitely get in and check out all those settings, but right now I'm concerned with these two, my dry and my wet signal. Dry is the unprocessed signal, and it's coming through at 0 dBs, or the same volume it comes in is going out, and the wet signal is at -10 dBs, so it's going softer. I want you to hear just what the processed wet signal sounds like first. So here's the wet signal of how this sounds in a diffuse hall. So that's what it sounds like to be in the wet hall. And the bigger the hall you get, like you can get into a large space, 9 seconds of ring available in this. As you can see, it's still ringing. You can definitely get in and mix these two, which would be my recommendation by far if this is how you're going to do this, so that you don't lose the attack factor and begin to sound like you're totally in a tin can. This is like a blend of the two. That's still a lot of ring. So let's go back to our small space diffuse hall. Here's a blend, their recommended blend of reverb for this particular track. Okay, so that is inline reverb function. So what's happening is it's starting here, it's getting through the reverb plugin, and then it's going to the stereo output straight away. So that is definitely one method to be potentially used in this process. However, I'm going to get rid of this plugin, and I'm going to change this. Now I'm going to add a send category. And when we add a send, those are called buses. So for now, we're going to say bus 1. Notice it added a new feature to my mixer. So this is what's happening now. My sound is being generated here. It's coming through the audio effects, getting any processing. Right now, none. It's coming to this little meter right here, and this dial will tell us how much of the signal we want to send to bus 1. So it's going to send the signal to bus 1, as well as continue to allow signal to go to the stereo output. So now we're going to come across. Now you've got some signal that can be processed a different way and join up and go to the stereo output all together. The signal is going this way. The signal is going this way. Getting bound up together. Now both signals are working toward the stereo output before coming down to your headphones. So we have to understand how the signal is flowing through this process in order to make sense of it. So now I'm going to use this knob, and I'm going to turn up some of my volume to go to bus 1. If I go to 0, then equal amounts of signal are both going to the headphones directly and to bus 1 before going to the headphones. So nothing's going to sound different right now because there's no different effects. But what I can do is do my drop down and now put my space designer over here on my preset. And when I go into my space designer, now we're going to use that small space diffuse hall, and I'm going to go no dry signal, all wet signal. So now we have a very, very reverby sound. if I play it for you, that side is just really gross sounding without much attack at all. And this side is still the clean signal, but both are being mixed together in the main stereo channel. So this is what it sounds like: super wet Space Designer and even signal being sent between bus 1 and going to the stereo output. So now we're getting that definite, clear attack pattern that's not being affected at all on the original retro synth, and we're getting the reverby sound on this side. The two blend together really nicely, so you don't lose the clarity and you still get the ring. So another reason this option is really good to bus in reverb this way is because you might have something where you want to do, let's add an Apple drummer to this track. So here's my boy Magnus, and he's going to be playing Glow Stick. So we're going to hear that. Well, say we want Glow Stick over here to sound like it was done in the same room that the retro synth was. Well, you can send multiple things to this bus 1. So he's got some platinum reverb over here. We're going to turn off his platinum reverb and his stereo delay so that we can really hear the effect over here. So this is what my dry drum sound is currently. Not too much ring on that, but we can add some send to bus 1 for the drum machine as well. So now we're going to turn up the signal. Both of these are now traveling to bus 1. So they're being added together over here and then being processed like they were in the same room. So here we go. This is the drummer being processed with the diffuse hall drum set and the plain signal going to the headphones. Oh no, I hope that did not sound good to your ears, because it certainly did not sound good to mine. Oh no, what can I do? Well, I can actually turn down the level of the signal that I send to the reverb so that we don't have it affect as much. So this is another form of mixing. Now let's hear it. Hopefully you noticed that I was turning down this knob as it went, and the sound actually improved with a little bit less reverb. So you can customize how much happened there. So now I'm going to go back, play the track, and play some of my synthesizer sound over top of that as well, so they begin to sound like they're in the same room. There's one little thing you should do before you try to do that, is make sure you select the correct synthesizer that you want to have your MIDI keyboard play in. I was actually adding sounds to the drummer down here. It's good enough to leave mistakes in, because I know things are going to happen every now and then. So here we go. This is the drum and the synth together. That was one dorky melody, but you began to hear what was happening. I would say, for me, that's probably still a little bit too much on that synth. So I'm going to draw it back just a little bit. Let's try that again just to see what happens. So there you have it. That's what it would sound like if you combine those two. Now, over here is my audio track that I'm doing. So I could actually put myself talking into bus 1 as well. And as you begin to hear, Now my voice has some room resonance in it as well. So you can balance out how much room resonance it has versus potentially keeping it kind of low and just getting a little reverb in there. So I hope you have found this useful. You can definitely have more than one bus running if you don't want them all running to the same thing. You can go, for instance, here is bus 456 all the way to number 256. Feel free to use whichever one, provide the processing you want, and you're set to go. Hope this was useful in understanding bus reverb.